and welcome to the next episode of Talksmack with Mac. Everybody that knows me knows I love horror movies, people. So I have Anne-Carolyne from the movie Butchers hopping on the podcast to kind of talk about her life as an actress, the movie, and whatever else we want to dive into.
Are you ready? Let's talk smack.
Ace, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for getting on. I know I was just thanking you before we got started, but I want to thank you again. So, my few little people that listen to my podcast can see my appreciation. But you were in the movie Butchers. The movie was absolutely awesome. I actually watched it again last night just to kind of, refresh my memory. It's been about a week or so, but I was a fan, so I don't mind running it back. But can you tell me your experiences on that movie?
I mean, Butchers was an absolute blast to film. I think the horror genre, I'm like on the opposite end of you a bit. I'm not a huge fan of horror, like very much. I get scared super easily. I have like super vivid dreams. So like horror movies tend to come and haunt me, not necessarily the night of, but like 3 months down the road, something from the movie will like make its way into my dreams. So I don't watch a lot of horror movies, but the more I act in them, the more I have an appreciation for them, just for like the way they're so good at building suspense throughout like the whole movie. Everything that's like related to like special effects and like the blood gags and, like Butcher's pretty like, we have some pretty gruesome stuff happening in the movie. So those are all super fun for me to kind of, just learn about and see how all that's done. And now I have way more appreciation for horror movie and I'm able to watch them because I think my brain is still a bit distracted because I'm appreciating the like creation of it rather than just like, oh crap, now I'm scared. So I met some amazing people that I still work with today. And just an overall blast filming Butchers. Yeah.
I can imagine. So I do have a silly question to ask you. Butchers was filmed in the summertime and I know it's hot. It's maybe a little humid. It's sticky. Do you guys like change the same clothes out over and over and over to kind of look fresh?
So I think Butchers, we ended up having about like 14 days of shooting. Mm-hmm. Started kind of in August. So and the whole premise was it was supposed to feel like it's a mucky, gross day. And everything happens during the day for Butchers, which was an intentional decision, because it's easier to do on a smaller budget production, but also just to not have those like super dark scenes that go at night. We wanted to create something scary and suspenseful in a very like day, happy feel type of context. And so you have these beautiful like shots in the fields and it's just, flowers are blooming and it's sunny outside and then people are getting chased and murdered. And so that was kind of like the contrast that the director, Adrian Langley, wanted to go a bit, part of his vision for it. And, which made the days in August, very hot and mucky. It was, so a lot of it wasn't like we didn't have to fake sweat or anything. Usually we have like a little Vaseline water mix spritzer that they put on you to make you look gross. Didn't need that. But towards the end of the movie, we were starting to get into September and we're starting at like 7 a.m. So sometimes those mornings were a bit more chilly. Yeah. And I would start a lot of my mornings with like a bucket of water thrown into my face for continuity. After I get a bucket of water thrown in my face in the film. So a lot of my mornings after that scene, I would show up to set. She'd do my pretty makeup and then she'd muck me up, blood, the gunk, the dirt would go into the hair. And then people were like rock, paper, scissors as to who was the one to get to throw the bucket of water in my face. So it was just like a very silly. But then in September, I remember being like super kind of like goosebumps and because it was slowly starting to be not as warm, but you still have to act like, hey, it's nice and warm and we're scared shitless, right? So, it's just a lot of fun. And in terms of costume, right, because I haven't answered your question yet. We had 2 versions of our costumes just for like as soon as you kind of get blood on it, that was like the blood version. And then we had the cleaner version in case we were filming stuff out of order. So I had 2 versions of my overalls. One gets like fully cut and like covered in blood. And then, I mean, that was pretty much my last scene that I filmed anyways. But yeah, my costume was very gross actually, because in one of the scenes I kind of throw up on myself. And yeah, there's just like a bean puree, like it's a bean, chickpea, tomato paste type of mix that I had to like hold in my mouth and then throw up. And yeah, that kind of stayed on the costume for 4 or 5 days. And I would like sometimes get a whiff of like the costume itself, kind of like, I was like, I feel gross. But like in the context of the horror movie, it kind of works, right? Like we're supposed to feel gross. We're supposed to, so very,
I guess the smell, the previous smell will kind of help you like jump back into that feeling.
Yeah, right
Holy
in.
shit, what's going on right now?
Yeah, right in. I remember
I'm glad that you brought up the throw up, because I've always wondered, like, what is that? I know they're not throwing up real. Maybe they are. Maybe they're just like really into the character. But
and I'm sure some people, do kind of, because for the specific scene, because the shot was so long, so they put the tomato paste and the gunk in my mouth, and I'm gagged too, right at that point. So I have like kind of the horse bit. And the whole camera does like a 360 around the room and then comes on me, and then I have to throw up. So for that like whole minute, I have to hold this, gross liquid in my mouth, but then your saliva is accumulating and it couldn't like start seeping through the side of my mouth. So I'm like the whole, and I was just like kind of like swallowing up the like gunk to try to have it just come out at the right time. So when it actually ended up coming out,
it might have been a little bit of real throw up in there too.
Yeah, like the kind of like gag reflex, because it actually kind of went to, and it had to come back up. And everybody's like, yo, that sounded so good. That looked so, I was like, I mean, it kind of felt good too. Like it felt like I was kind of throwing up good. Yeah. So yeah, and through the gag too, like through like it's just absolute, like so gross, so wonderful. Yeah, enjoy the horror movies.
Yes. I was going to say, as soon as that bit would have been in my mouth, it would have been a wrap. I'm throwing up for sure. So for a whole minute with a whole bunch of nasty shit in your mouth, that's dedication right there.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's like, to me, that's part of why I love like acting in general so much, because you get to do crazy stuff that, when else am I going to be chained and, bound and like having people punch me in the face and like, like, when else is that going to happen, right? And I get to put myself in situations that, like, knock on wood, I'll never have to actually be in, because I would not get murdered in my life. But yeah, so that's kind of very much as like crazy and gross as I probably make it sound on the day. I was like so giddy and excited to do it. I'm like, yes, can't wait.
I'm sure that would be one hell of a scene to film, because everybody, well, of course, the reason I love movies is because the teamwork that's involved. Everybody has to be perfect at that, short amount of time or extended period of time. And when you have teamwork like that, it could be a very magical thing. I wanted to ask you, since you're not a fan of horror movies, does that kind of help with you naturally just being terrified on set and kind of helps you act a little bit?
Yeah, maybe, like probably. I know one thing that, especially for like all the suspense building scenes, crazy how slow they're being filmed. Like there's a moment in the movie where I have to grab like a crowbar, and I kind of slowly make my way out of the building. And at that moment, so I did the first take, and the director's like, like half that speed. I'm like, half that speed. Like, okay. And I grab the crowbar and I'm walking, and it feels super slow. And it like, to me, it felt like I was taking like 3 minutes to, go from point A to point B. That was maybe, 10 meters away. Like it was not a long distance and just so slow. But then in the movie, once you had like, when I saw it, I was like, I completely understand it now, because it is that like, the audience knows what's going on, but my character doesn't, right? And so, like, my character's having this feeling of like something's not right, but the audience knows like, yo, girl, get the hell out of there. Like, get the fuck out. And so that suspense building, it really comes from that, you know, like how awkward it felt to do it that slow. It just ended up working perfectly, right? And that really comes into like the director having the vision for it and going like, no, I know what the scenes need. And so when I see horror movies now and I see those suspense building scenes, I realize how slow people are actually going in that scene. I'm like, look at their steps, you know, like they're like building their way up. But it just with the music and everything, like, and to me, horror movies is a lot in the music, because when I get too scared, I either mute the movie or I put it on like 1.2 speed, just so the music's like offbeat, and then I'm not scared anymore. So I realize a lot of it has to do with, like, for me anyways, is the music and the chills of it, because it just, gets me right to the bone.
Yeah, the music is the shit in horror movies in general, but the music in this one, I was complimenting it again last night as I was watching. You know, it's the subtle things, the subtle sounds that you make that can intensify scenes or movies in whole, for that matter. But the music was perfect, and the angles of Butchers was phenomenal. I like the lower end, the higher end, you know, all the different angles, and more specifically, the long standstill shots and dialogue. Simon, that dude is absolutely phenomenal. And the standstill scenes that he has of just him kind of just fucking going off on people is absolutely amazing. Yeah, this is a good movie. Like, again, like it was like my first kind of feature film that I actually got to be part of. And I'm so grateful because I got to work, you know, Simon, which still to this day, one of my like best buddies, and like, I've worked with him like ever since, basically. And then Adrian just being like an absolute pro in anything. Like when he has a vision for his films, he knows exactly, like when we go into the day, he knows exactly the shots that he's going into. And I'm not sure if I'm probably with Butchers as well, but like his music too, like he does most of the scoring on all his movies as well. And like a lot of the time that's already in his head before he even it gets to the filming. So it just, everything just comes together so flawlessly. And it was such a pleasure to be able to work with, you know, people. And to me, like I got to work with people that were so great. And I felt like it brought me up, you know, like 3 notches during that movie. And it is that type of atmosphere where you spend 12 hours on set in these like ridiculous like situations and conditions. And you just get so close to people so quickly. Like within 3 days, you're there having like, you know, lifelong discussions about like dreams and like, which sometimes you haven't even had with like some of your friends from like 6 years ago, right? Like, so you get so close so quickly to people. And I think that's also one of the aspects that I just love about set and, you know, like the industry is like when it clicks, it just like, it clicks, and you get to like spend time with your best friends, you know, making awesome movies that hopefully people enjoy. So that's awesome. When you're thrown into the fire with people and you spend, like you said, those messed up circumstances or, you know, messed up weather, it's cold, it's hot, it's sticky. When you're with people, going through the suck with them for so long, you're gonna build those tight relationships. And I'm sure it has direct correlation to the chemistry on film too, on scene. Yeah.
And I think like, again, like, because Simon was kind of, the reason we got so close was because we were filming an hour and like 30 minutes away from where most of us were staying. And I couldn't quite drive at that time because, and this will maybe be a story for later, but I couldn't drive. So he was my ride most mornings and evenings to get back. So out of like, I think 11 or 12 days for me on set, I think he drove me like 9 of those days. So on top of spending 12 hours on set together, we'd have 3 hours in a car together. So like, definitely a lot of shenanigans happened in those 3-hour car rides every day. But then on camera, that definitely translated into a level of trust that we had. Like there's a lot of scenes where Simon needs to be like rough with me, right? Like he's tying me up in burlap sack and like yanking me off the ground. And there was just this level of trust throughout the like physicality of it, of like, okay, you know, like, I trust you to not hurt me, but he also trusted that like I could take, you know,
a little bit.
Yeah, like the roughening up a bit, you know, like there had to be that like level of like when he punched me in the face. I think we did that like maybe twice or three times, and every time people were just like it was such a knock, but it just felt so good, you know, like not. It never, like it just felt like the right moment. And again, that comes with angles and stuff. It's really not that close to me, but you just need that synchronization to react at the right time to sell the punch. And yeah, I think all of that came with just being able to trust each other that well from being so close in terms of like, yeah, spending so much time together.
Was there ever a time when you were either driving to work or driving home and Simon was like, hey, I'm going to fuck you up tomorrow, you know?
I mean, a lot of the days I was like, so what are we filming today? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hey, sorry, this is a rough one for you. You know, like I think one day in particular, most of the day I spent in the burlap sack. And so in terms of like, there's like, I think a really silly video of me on set between takes where like, so they like, lift me back up and like help me sit down, and I'd be like super kind of stiff in my sack, right? And I'm just having a very regular conversation because I could see through it, but they couldn't see me through the sack. So then I'm just like, yeah, every now and then, just having like a very typical conversation, and it's like, do you know how ridiculous you look right now? Because we're talking to just like a little moving like pile of, you know, rope and fabric. And so I was just like, instead of like resetting up everything, like, and I could have gone now, but when the setup's going to take like 6 minutes, it'll take longer to take me out of it and put me back in. So I just, yeah. So I think there's a full day that like I spent most of my scenes in that sack. And so it just became a bit of that running gag of like, hey, there goes the sack. So, yeah, I was kind of jumping around set, kind of making my way places. So yeah.
Man, behind the scenes film, I'm a very big fan of film, so I would absolutely fall in love behind the scenes and seeing the work and the funniness that comes with the movies. In the scene when you are in the sack and Julie pulls you out of the truck and you hit the ground, were you in the sack?
Yep.
You felt hard.
Yeah, so that one we did, there was 2 takes, I think, because you don't see me hit the ground. So I was kind of lucky enough that we got to put like a ton of padding on the bottom. So she like pulls me, and Julie is like super, super strong, right? Like that girl can like everybody on set. And we were like, I would mess with anybody on set except for Julie. Like she does jiu-jitsu. She'll take you down in a heartbeat, right? So like she had no struggling to do to take me out, but it has to look like, you know, I can't she can 100% take on Simon. Simon won't admit it, but Julie can kick his ass any day. So she had to like struggle. And then like, yeah, right. Like I would feel the edge of the truck bed kind of getting closer and closer. And then there was just this moment of like, okay, I'm going to fall about 2 feet, right? And then stonk. But again, the sound effects of like me falling makes it sound that much more intense, right? Because really to me, it was just kind of, okay, well, like I was falling on a very big cushion, and it was like, yeah, it was just very and all the gags are done very safely too, right? Like if somebody gets hurt, then the whole production can't continue. So they have to make sure that things are, you know, safe. And so, yeah.
Make sure you guys can keep going the next day. Yeah. Shout out to Adrian again, because it looked like you fell and busted your head pretty damn hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and Julie was actually she was actually moving you the whole time. How was honestly, like Julie had no problem. Like at one point she was like kind of dragging me, and looks like she's struggling, like just to give an idea of like how like amazing actress she is. That girl can lift me up with her pinky, you know, like she's like, I swear, like everybody was like, yeah, like, do you need help? Like, is this okay? And she's like, oh yeah, this is fine. Like, because when I was watching, I was like, there's no way she's going to be able to pick that girl up and just, I thought she was going to like toss you on her shoulder and just, you know, walk into the house or something. But yeah, man, it goes down to the skills and stuff.
Yeah. Just a lot of what you see on movies, a lot of everything's fake. Everything's like And I think that's the fun side of it, is being part of it, is realizing, you know, all those tricks and aspects that people use, like smoke machines, right? Being like a huge kind of factor to set like mood and atmosphere in horror movies. And we had like this saying on set where when there's smoke, there's action, because we had the hardest time with our smoke machines. They had like the cool down time for them to reset was so long. So as soon as like we'd have smoke, we'd have people like fanning it out to like spread it across it. And then it was like action. So we had to like, it was so close. Every time we had smoke, anytime in the movie, there's a lot of waiting around for those smoke machines to actually like get into motion. Cause yeah, we had the hardest time, especially in the woods. Like we needed to get the smoke machines away from the road. But then if we plugged more than 2 extension cords, like the machine didn't have enough power. So we had to like bring trucks closer to the, like, it was so much stuff went on to make it look so eerie and moody. And in the movie, nobody thinks twice about the smoke. You know, like people aren't supposed to pay attention to the smoke because they're paying attention to the, you know, to the action that's going on. So yeah, a lot of like our running in the woods scene and stuff like that. It was a lot of like, there's smoke, there's action. Yeah.
We got to take advantage. Let's go.
Yeah.
So being an actress in a horror movie, or I guess any movie for that matter, but horror specifically, before you start the scene and you know you're supposed to be tired and beat up and just, I guess your heart rate has risen a little bit. How do you get into the zone? Do you like run around before and then sit down and you're like, all right, come on, let's go?
Yeah, but like honestly, very much that, especially like the scenes, where you're getting chased and stuff. And actually, like smoke machine time ended up giving us that 3 to 5 minutes, usually of reset, to be able, like, me and Julie would just be sprinting down the road, doing like push-ups, kind of like, shadow boxing, just to like get any type of like adrenaline flowing. And as soon as action, you're already exhausted from that like intense 3 to 5 minutes that you just did, that the running looks intense because we're kind of actually dying a bit inside. Yeah. And Julie, who was like super fit, was like, I'm not even like panting. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not as fit as Julie. So yeah, I am panting like a motherfucker, because I was like, oh, I maybe gave myself too much there.
Give me a minute. I need a buffer.
Yeah. And it's funny because like in like a few of the scenes we had to do ADR for, which is like re-recording the sound. Just either because, there's like an airplane passing or a train or something. So on a few occasions we had to do the sounds in the room, and then going from, having that momentum on the day in the recording booth that's, like a tiny, like, kind of like the room you're in now, right? So we would try to like run on the spot and try to get that same level of like excitement and adrenaline, and to try to get that same fear when we're running, going like, where's the car? Where is it? Just to get those same conditions a bit more, because it needs to match, right? Like you need to match your own lips when you're doing ADR. So a lot of it was, us doing push-ups in a tiny room to try to get that same level of excitement and adrenaline. Yeah.
Do some burpees. That'll get the heart rate going real quick, right?
Yeah.
So when you do the ADR and you're in the room, you're watching yourself on film of the recording. Is the volume on a little bit to kind of sync up?
So sometimes I think it depends, because some people prefer seeing it, and you'll have headphones on. So then through the headphones, you can hear yourself and then record it. And then, but I think how we did it on Butchers, so they would record they would play them film, and we'd listen to it like 3 to 4 times and kind of repeat after ourselves. And then he would just let us do it 3, 4, like on our own, try to match that same pace on our own. So then, and as soon as he heard it, Adrian was like, yeah, that's the one. And then our sound technician would put it in, make sure it matches up. And if it did, then that was the take. So often like all this stuff was usually just, you listen to yourself, you repeat after yourself a few times. And then as soon as we were ready, like, because sometimes hearing yourself messes you up a bit. So like having no sound and just being able to have it super fresh in your brain from having listened to it 10 seconds earlier. And then you just kind of,
go with the flow and kind of emulate it.
Yeah.
And I guess when it comes down to it, you're making a product for people and you're selling yourself in that product. So you're like, shit, I got to make sure this is perfect.
Yeah. Like obviously like everybody, and I think with these kinds of like independent films, everybody was so like invested into this project, right? Like everybody, like we read the script and all of us were like, let's make this the best that we can, right? So I think everybody that showed up to set was just so on point, like so like 100% like ready for the day. And we definitely like, I mean, we have nothing to gain from doing something shitty, right? So everybody kind of just gave it their all. And I think the more you work with people that have that mindset, the more it's easy for you to feel exactly the same, right? And feel like, yeah, I mean, let's do something great.
Yeah, I feel you on that. One thing with these indie films is, low budget. So I guess sometimes I'm going to say non-horror fans, when you think of low budget, you think immediately horror movie is going to be trash. But one thing that sets aside those movies is the acting. What quality of acting are you getting? And all of you sold it. All of you as a team. I don't know if it was like because you were a small, tight-knit group. Yeah. How many were on like production on the site, like maybe like 10 or 12?
Yeah, like on our biggest days, yeah, like we had a few people, and then as soon as we got into like smaller sets, then we didn't need as many people. Like when we were in the woods, we kind of needed a lot of like hands to get stuff doing, but then when we started getting into like the barn stuff, we didn't need as many people. But yeah, 10 was like probably our biggest crew day, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like when it's a smaller group and you're spending so much time with each other, driving back and forth, you find that chemistry quick. And when everybody buys into the same thing that we're going to put out the best possible product, kind of, I don't know, raises the stakes a little bit. Let's see what we could really do. And the acting, it was great. It was really great.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like we had a few rehearsals, and rehearsals are always that until you're in costume and on location and with other people in costume, like in rehearsals, you think you're going 100%, but really you're at like 75, right? Of like, even pretend, like, like we're pretending in rehearsal to be chained up. Once you're actually chained up, you go from that 75 to 120, like real quick. And like, yeah, like even the barn scene when we're like chained up, and like me and Julie that day, like that was an emotionally like intense day for us, but that's always going to be a moment that like for me, that was such a like a powerful day just to be like with Julie, and we're like bawling our eyes out, and like everybody in the room was so respectful. As soon as like they'd have to switch the setup, Adrian would be like, hey, we're going to be like 10, 15 minutes. Do you guys want to be like, we'll take the chains off. And then it's harder. Like for me anyways, I can't talk for everybody. For me, it's harder to like get to that headspace and then come back down and then try to get back into it.
So did you stay chained up the whole time?
So we were let out, especially like when the setups were like going to be longer, but often like we're in this smaller room. Adrian like knew exactly where he was going and what the next shot was going to be. So he's like, hey, we're like 5 minutes. And me and Julie often were like, we'll stay here for 5 minutes, like we'd take the gag out, but like often the chance, because like, yeah. And it really was just that aspect of like staying in it. And as soon as like I would slowly start to lose it, I would hear like Julie sniffle, or like, because it was like a seesaw effect too, right? So if I pull down, she would have to like shoot back up. And if I shot up, like, so there's like a moment where like when the camera was on like one or the other one, we had to like, kind of like pretend like we were fighting against our chains. While that's happening with one of us, if I'm here, Julie was like stretched out as much as she could to like give me that like wiggle room. And as soon as it like went on to her, I had to like shoot up and give her the wiggle room to like play with her ropes. So like, yeah, we were let out quite often during the day, but we were like often if there was too close of a setup, we kind of just stayed there. And yeah, I would hear her sniffle or move or like the chains rustle, and it just brought you right back into it. And so like, that was just like such a powerful day to like like a scene that I'm very lucky to have gone to do with Julie, even if we're not reacting like quite with each other. But yeah, I was just like, as drained as I was at the end of the day.
Yeah. Still feeling each other's energy the entire time, whether you're here or not. Yeah. So on days like that, when you know that type of scene is coming, is there anything that you do mentally to prepare, maybe the day before or the day of?
So I think is very different for everybody. But for sure, because we did the barn scene twice. One of the days, Freddie actually got sick and couldn't be there. So we did a lot of the shots that Freddie, who plays, Chris, who plays Chris, Freddie, who plays Chris, couldn't be there for one day. So we did a lot of the shots like Simon, me and Julie shots that he doesn't need to be in. And then the next day they brought him in. And as soon as I saw him on the ground, face down in like a pile of like dirt and mud and like, and he had like a giant gash on the back of his back. And I went into Headspace that like, obviously like, I have military parents, my brother's in the military. So like I went to the headspace of like, this could be my brother, right? Like this could be any of my like parents or brother. And as soon as like I saw the gash, I thought that I was gone, right? Like I was just like, like bawling. But there's like, again, like I would kind of snap out of it at one point, and then Julie would like kind of bring me right back into it until the end of the day. And as soon as the day wrapped, I like, no, not even, as soon as we finished the scene, they're like, girls, amazing, cool, like, you're done. I like texted my brother, I'm like, I love you so much, oh my God. And he just replies, what do you need? And I'm like, no, I just like I just went to such a horrible headspace of like thinking you were gone all day that like I just need, I got home and I just spent like 5 minutes like just telling him like, yo, like I can't believe you're alive. So, yeah, that was like a very like hard place to go, obviously mentally. But as soon as the day was over, I was very much like, I need hugs. Like, I just need to like be reassured that like, so everybody on set was like, whatever you need. Right. And I was just like, yeah, just yeah, this feels amazing. Thank you guys. So yeah, that was kind of like my process to like get that, get to that headspace for those like super intense scenes. So yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine like some actors and actresses when you are put into a scene like that where you really have to like dive deep into that headspace, the long-term like psychological effects that it could have on people.
Oh, for sure. Like, and I think I think that's why my process of like the physical like contact of hugs and just like, spending time with my brother really helps kind of get me out of that headspace very quickly. Right. But the thing is, it's kind of that aspect too of, once you use that too many times, not that you get numb to it, but it doesn't work after a certain amount of like, so like if I'm trying to go to a certain headspace and I try to go there again for certain scenes, like after the movie, like for another movie, for example, it doesn't always work now. And I feel like it's your body's way of maybe like protecting yourself against those like kind of harder emotions to deal with. But yeah, I very much like, yeah, just I think it's important to be able to snap out of it because, or else
you want to get stuck in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just be down and depressed forever.
Yeah. It can be rough. And I think just like being able to like, you film a scene like that, and then the next day we're filming other, scenes that are, running through wood and back to like the adrenaline stuff kind of makes it probably easier to just have one day of like super intense kind of emotional demanding stuff rather than having, I can't imagine people that have to, act in a character that requires that for, 3 months at a time. Like that would just be absolutely crazy.
Yeah. For some reason, what just popped into mind was Harry Potter. Those from children, those guys, a whole bunch of them were acting like wizards for a decade. Afterwards, I'd still be trying to whip my wand around.
Still going on with your wands and your spells.
Yeah, exactly. Really trying to indulge myself in the wizardry world. But what I wanted to ask is, you're not a big horror fan. So what drew you into this character or this film?
So like at the time, I didn't have an agent representation. So a lot of the castings that I was finding were through Facebook. So there's like the Ottawa Actors Facebook group, and I saw the casting call for it. I applied, got in the room, and then I think a lot of us were auditioning because there was originally just two roles. Actually, there was three female roles in the movie, and I think not all of us, but I know I auditioned for both of them, knowing Taylor was kind of more, to me, Taylor's the role that I usually don't get. I used to play a lot of, the girl next door, the girl that gets cheated on, that gets her heart broken, and for like 2 years before Butchers, all I played was like the goody two shoe, right? And then in Butchers, I saw the role of Taylor, and in the audition, there was like some really like fun, raunchy kind of scenes. And I was like, oh, this is a fun role. Like, this is like, she gets to play the bitch. Like like, she gets so many fun kind of bitchy attitude moments. And for me, that was like, oh yeah, I think Taylor's for me. And I'm really happy because I got to, and it kind of set the tone for a lot of my roles after that. Like, it kind of broke my goody two-shoe mold, and I got to play like really kind of dark, bitchy, full of attitude, like some villains. Like, I got to play really fun, because you don't get to be those characters in real life, right? Like, you don't get to just like cheat on your friend and not have any repercussions. You don't get to like murder people, like, so that was always kind of my transition into playing kind of mean roles and the bad characters, which are very fun as well.
Yeah, I would like to play something opposite than myself. I kind of think that I'm a nice person sometimes. People may say otherwise, but I would like to play like a fucking asshole or like a thug or something. Let me put some guns in my hands and let me go shoot some shit up. I guess that's the fun of being an actor. You could just, I guess, put your mind in a different place and really be a different person for that time.
Yeah. And I think it forces you to just, like, all the prep that you do for a character too, right? Like, it forces you to have just like, I think, a level of empathy too, because there's certain characters that I got to play that I have like no bearing in terms of like being able to play those characters. Like, recently played a crack addict. And so I didn't really have and that's as much as like, I did as much research as I think I could for the role, but it's always that, like, I also want to portray it well, right? Like, I don't want to give it that. So for me,
all right, people, we're having, technical difficulties, but it doesn't matter what I am facing or Anne is facing. We're going to get through it together and have a great podcast. So we both don't know what the hell we were just talking about, but I have, questions for Days. You said you're not a horror fan, so is that going to kind of dictate your roles going forward?
Which is kind of funny, because as much as I'm not a horror fan, I've done a lot of horror in the past, like 2-3 years. Like, I think I've died in the like 7 to 8 times in the past 8 years. Which is, I mean, I love acting in horror, definitely a genre that I love, kind of the physicality, I think, of the roles too. Like, there tends to be more of, that like running and fighting and kind of that like fight will to live to so I really kind of do enjoy acting in those. But then I mean, comedy is always kind of a fun genre to do as well. A lot of the stuff I've been able to do, I've gone to actually work with Simon and Doug, who's one of the producers on Butchers, quite a few times. And we just kind of like, again, like, get to work with your best friends. So like, it's just an absolute blast. But I think because like, I do have an advantage in the sense that like, I'm bilingual in French and English. And so in English, a lot of my characters are, these dark, kind of like not necessarily dramatic, but that have like lived characters. And then in French, I get a lot of like commercials where I'm like super bubbly, super happy, and a lot of kids TV shows. So like complete other end of the spectrum. So yeah. I love the diversity of it. I think it keeps everything fresh as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say being diverse can kind of, I'm assuming, open up a lot more lanes for you to pursue. Like you said, when you did the horror movie, it kind of lets you know that, hey, I could do this, I can kick ass in horror. And then you were a crackhead, so you're like, hey man, if I gotta smoke a little crack, I could play that off too a little bit. So the diversity is everything. If there was like one genre that you wanted to do in the future that you have or have not done so far, what would that be?
I think I'm realizing the more I do them, the more I have fun with them is action scenes. So the more, not necessarily that I would go into like stunt work, because I think I'm a bit too much of a sissy. Like I've met like all the stunt people I've ever met are just like absolute badasses. Like they are tough. They are super skilled. Like every single stunt, like women and guy that I've met are just, they blow my mind. Like they do everything. Like these guys are just like fearless. I love them. But I very much like on-stage combat. Like I love on-screen combat. I got to do a bit for like a zombie movie that'll be coming out, I think, in like December. And the more I've done it, the more like I realize how excited I get for those scenes. And I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, this is cool. Like this is really neat. So yeah, anything that's like pretty, like I would like a pretty cool badass, like role that I get to like, punch a few people and like get punched back, and fair enough.
Yeah, I feel like that's everybody's dream is, let me act like I'm a super badass, but I don't have to take any of the punishment. My hands don't hurt, my face doesn't hurt anything. Yeah, that's the beauty of acting. Do you do anything to kind of like, I guess, in between movies or shows or commercials, do you do anything to prep yourself for certain roles? Or like you said, you mentioned shadow boxing before. Do you do any boxing to kind of stay in shape?
Yeah. So I'm like super looking forward to get back into, so I did a bit of kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. Again, like definitely not at any level of like competition or anything, but just I like the physicality of it. Like I like what it like brought out of me. But I'm like, again, like I'm very much a sissy. Like I remember doing like, I love the kickboxing classes and I love doing pad work. I think that's why I love choreography, because everything is pre-set in advance. I know when the punch is coming, because when we do any type of sparring, my reflexes are trash. So like, I literally like dodge right into someone's arm, and they're like, "Why did you do that?" I was like, "Well, I thought this was coming." They're like, "But it wasn't." I was like, "No, I realized that because you punched me in the face."
Yeah, right.
I get punched in the face, like, and all the guys that I've sparred with, they obviously don't go 100%. But as soon as like they accidentally land a punch or something, my automatic go-to reaction is just like my nose starts, crying, like everything starts crying. Like it's just, but not that it hurts, but it's just like a really bad reflex. And how many times have I seen that look of like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't know where they feel so bad. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I can keep going. They're like, you're crying. I'm like, no, but I'm fine. I'm okay.
I do this every time.
Like absolute horror. So like, I think that's why I love the choreography aspect of like on-screen combat, because everything's predetermined and it's a dance at that point, right? We're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, fall. Like it just makes so much sense, and I can follow that. I know it's coming. I can prep for it. So yeah, I think I'm very much excited to go back into training for kickboxing and like trying different types of martial arts as well. I feel is very beneficial to just, physically being ready for a role, but also like for the flexibility, for like just mental health. Like I definitely realized that I need to move in my life, because during winter I tend to hibernate and not do much, and I just get into this cocoon of like for like 6 months, and then summer comes back around and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm alive again. So yeah.
I'm usually in that cocoon in summertime. In Las Vegas, like for instance, today is supposed to be 115. I'm not leaving my house.
Yeah,
I don't want any of those problems.
Yeah, they stay cool and like in front of a fan and an AC, right?
Yes, and with his like minimalist clothes. And like short shorts or something. It's absolutely miserable. It feels like a blow dryer as soon as you open your door.
Yeah, and that kind of like, like it just like takes your breath away of how
It's almost like I open my door and I feel that takes my breath away and I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I shut the door and I go back to the couch. Luckily, my podcasts are in my house.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah,
that's why.
Makes my job a little bit easier. So how long have you been acting for?
So I decided when I graduated university, which 3 years ago. So about 3 years that I've been doing it like full time. Throughout university, I did like a whole bunch of like different like murder mysteries and short films and stuff like that. And I mean, basically it was graduating university in business and telling myself, look, I already don't have a job. I'm already not making money. So let's at least go do something that I love. So I got into acting and kind of told myself I'd do it until I no longer enjoy doing it. And that's obviously not the case yet because I'm still, eating it breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah. So when you were in college, how were you landing those small murder mysteries and stuff like that?
So that was all through Facebook until like, and I think it goes through. So like my first year, like my first 2-3 years in university, I was just getting small little jobs through Facebook, and then kind of did my research in Ottawa, realized that like there's a few casting websites, Smite Casting. So I signed up with like them and got a few castings through them. And then, the more you work in the industry, you start learning about like Actor Access and Casting Workbook, which are the sites where you upload your resume, your headshots, and your demo. And obviously, the more professional your stuff is, the more likely you are to, get invited into an audition room. And so it kind of the learning curve of like seeing my first headshots that I actually had done in LA, probably like when I was 18, so 6 years ago, watching them now and then seeing my headshots now, kind of the evolution of that as well. And realizing like, yeah, of course, like it's a constant growing. Like, I'm sure I'm going to look at the stuff I did this, I'm sure in 5 years, I'll look at stuff I did this year and go like, oh my goodness, I could, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that there's the constant evolution of, getting better and getting to work with people that make you better. Yeah,
I guess like anything else, repetition, you do it over and over and over again, you'll start to get a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I guess you made a very valid point. I forget that, actors do get better. Actresses do get better. Yeah. So a movie that, let's say Denzel did in, the 90s, maybe in the 2010s, he looks back and is like, oh man, I could have did this better. Or maybe this facial expression wasn't good enough, or my reaction here could have been, a little bit better. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you have coming next? You said you have a zombie movie, which I'm a zombie geek. So I'll definitely make sure to check that out. You have that movie coming out later on this year. What else do you have coming?
So quite a few. So right now, like Stealing Chaplin, which I did with like Simon and Doug are the two main characters in that one. So that's out on to rent and to buy, I think, on Amazon Prime. So yeah, Stealing Chaplin, kind of very dark comedy. So it's two brothers that like steal the body of Charlie Chaplin to try to ransom it. And once they have the body, they obviously don't know what to do with it. People are after them. It's a bit of a shit show. It was so much fun to play. We filmed that in Vegas.
Hey.
So that was my first time actually going to Vegas. I got to spend 2 weeks, and like, it's funny because the whole Vegas experience that I had was definitely through film set. We got to spend a whole day at a strip club filming different stuff. And I just got to be my little snoop and explore around and finding the pile of like belts and shoes that gets like left over at the club and like just like yeah, it was like a funny, like I never actually got to go to a strip club in Vegas, but I spent a whole day in it, and so yeah, there's an absolute blast to film. Zombie movie, which is called The World Ends at Camp Z, is going to be coming out, and I was told December, but again, like there's so much that goes into the post-production that like it, hopefully December, but I can't be certain for that. And then a few other things that should be coming out either end of this year or beginning of next year, like the crackhead character I got to play. The working title currently is February, but again, like it might change along the way.
Everything is up in the air,
even Butchers wasn't called Butchers at first. So like most of all my movies aren't called what they're called when they end up being released. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so I'll stay tuned. Yeah. I'll be sure to bug you and find out stuff like that later on.
I usually post everything on like my Instagram in terms of like what's coming out and releases. Yeah, just it's an easy way for everybody to kind of see. Yeah. Okay,
so you've been doing this full time for about 3 years, you said, and in my mind, you're having very successful 3 years. Do you have any advice that you would give to up-and-coming actors or actresses that may be struggling a little bit, or they're losing their confidence to keep on pursuing that dream?
I mean, it honestly, like, I think I was lucky to learn early on that like the rejection of it, so like you're going to audition, 50 times, right, before maybe landing even a single thing. But I think for sure headshots, like invest in a really good headshot photographer. Like I think I paid $300 for my 4 headshots and getting different characters. So I have one where like I'm more business professional that I tend to send for commercials, one that's more kind of, the girl next door, flowery shirt. And then I have my like leather jacket, kind of badass. So know a bit what kind of characters you want to play, what kind of look you're good for. And get headshots that represent that. Honestly, as soon as I kind of got those headshots, like I just saw my audition rate go like way up. As soon as I had professional headshots, I grabbed people's attention on like casting directors that scroll through 500 pictures just to, select, a handful of people that are going to come in for the audition. Definitely helped. I know that at first, like, just a lot of Facebook groups in your areas. Like I was on Ottawa actors, Montreal actors, Toronto actors, any town that was, like driving distance from me. And I was applying, and just a lot of times kind of accepting that you might have done the best performance that you could, and you probably were absolutely great, but you're just maybe not what they're looking for. Maybe they were looking for someone blonde. And even if you can dye your hair, that there's a look often that like grabs people's attention. And I got to, for Butchers, actually, I got to be in the room during the auditions. I offered to be a reader for when I got my audition. They're like, hey, Thursday, can you come in? And I was like, yeah, do you need a reader? And they're like, actually, yeah, we don't have a female reader for the day. I got to see the audition process for the whole day. And I think that opened up my eyes of how quickly a decision is made. Like people would come in and be off script for your auditions. A lot of people still have their scripts in mind. And as soon as you read and then all the director really sees is that you can read, right? You can't give like 100% of your performance if you don't know your lines well for your audition. So yeah, like try to be off book for every audition, because then you're able to apply direction. And oftentimes in auditions, even if you do exactly what they're looking for the character, they might give you like an absolute curveball of like, actually try it this way, just to see if you can take direction well and apply it. Because on the day you don't have 50 takes to do your scene, right? Like oftentimes we would get 4 takes, and that was kind of like, okay, well, we need to move on. We don't have the rest of the day. So kind of being able to adapt and not take things personally, because it often never is about you personally. So yeah, I think those are just small little good headshots, be directable.
I think that's some amazing advice. Yeah. Who is normally in the room for the auditions when you go in there, like a director and producer and the writer?
Writer, not necessarily. I think on the indie features that I've gone to audition for, producers were in the room, director was in the room. A few times the writer was in the room as well. But oftentimes those are all like people that the director might be the writer, right? Like on indie films, it's often kind of a lot of the roles overlap. Everybody does a bit of everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, oftentimes for like stuff that isn't necessarily indie featured, the first round you'll just have the casting director. And with COVID, self-tapes became like kind of the norm for the first round of auditions. And a lot of the casting directors that have done podcasts and kind of like training and classes of their own have been saying that they actually really like the self-tape setup. So getting a good setup also is kind of important, because if that's here to stay, you want to make sure that you have good lighting, that you don't, you have a good backdrop that won't be distracting. If you have a whole bunch of shelves, like that attention that the casting director takes away from you, right? And all you want is all the attention to be on you for that 1 minute that you get. So yeah, at the first round, often going to be casting directors. And then if you make it to the callback, then you'll have the director and producer. Sometimes the writer is going to be in the room. And then that's when they get to give you pointers and direction for it. So
do you still get nervous when you go and audition?
I think not through self-tapes, because I know I'm alone with my camera. I have a reader. But in person, yeah, I still get those butterflies for sure. And I think that's part of I think it's important not to be so nervous that it kind of messes you up, but to be excited for it. Because if you are excited, I feel you have fun with it, and that's one thing that this year I've really gone to do more with characters and auditions, is just have fun with my characters, oftentimes they ask for 2 takes anyway. So I'll do one more kind of like normal. And then I have a version of the character that's, with a decision that I made, that's either like a quirky tick or accent or something to kind of show something different that might grab their attention.
Maybe set you aside a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. So I think there was one more question I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I forgot. It was a good one too. That's all good. On every single time I have a brand new person that comes to my show, I give them the time where they can let people know where to find them, what they got coming up next. Anything you want the listeners or watchers to know, this is your time to shine. And I sit back and kind of shut my mouth.
That's the worst question so far. I never know how to answer that. But I mean, I guess to find me, it'll be on Instagram at Ace of Drama. And then, I mean, there's not much, I don't necessarily find that I have much to say about myself. You asked so many good questions to begin. I felt like I got to share a lot of my experience.
No, it was excellent. Yeah, it was excellent.
I love your hosting. I'm honestly very, you make people feel very comfortable. I felt very at home, very,
Thank you. My kind of idea for my podcast, especially first time people getting on and we don't know each other, it might be a little awkward. I try to give that feel as if we're at a bar having a drink, just chilling and, having a conversation. Yeah,
honestly, you rock that, because I'm just missing the drink part. I should have gotten my gin out.
Yeah, right. Next time on the next one.
12 in the afternoon on a Thursday.
Or for me, have the gin at 9 a.m, getting a little weird.
Yeah. That's how you become an alcoholic, isn't it?
Hopefully I'll never find out. But thank you. I very much appreciate it. This is Ace hopping on Talk Smack with Mac, but that sums it up for another episode. I appreciate everybody that watched or listened, and this was a lot of great advice for all aspiring actors and actresses out there. Anne really did one hell of a job on my podcast and kind of set you aspirers to be great. So thanks again for getting on the podcast, and I would absolutely love to have you on again sometime.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.